everyone to AI for India's first podcast interview. It's part of our effort to kind of highlight the great work that some of our members have been doing and also to bring information about what their startups are doing and what their larger vision for artificial intelligence is. And for our very first session, we have a very special guest with us. Some of you might already know him, Dr. Sanat Mohanty, founder and CEO of Pienomial. And for those of you who don't know what Pienomial is, it's a startup that leverages artificial intelligence to help life science companies, something that's very critical in this day and age. And we couldn't be more excited to have him here today. So thank you so much, Dr. Mohanty, for joining us.
Hey, Karam, thank you for having me.
Great. We'll jump right in. And, like I said, maybe not everyone in the audience knows what binomial is. And even for those of us who know, it'll be wonderful to understand, what motivated you to start binomial. What was the larger mission that drove you towards it? And what is your vision for the company?
Hey, great question, Karam. People are generally very aware of the healthcare space, but life sciences space is slightly different in the sense that healthcare is around the delivery of therapies to patients. Life sciences is mostly concerned about the development of those therapeutical strategies, whether they are based on drugs, whether they are based on medical devices. Increasingly, we are seeing the role of digital health and behavioral sciences in healthcare. A major issue in the life science space, which is the development of these tools or these therapy strategies, is it is very slow, and it is there's a lot of studies that go in. Most of them don't end up with as approved therapies. So, as an example, there are over 40,000 trials ongoing with FDA any given year. You could pare that down and say maybe 15, 20,000 of those are for new drugs. Typically, FDA will approve about 40, 45 new drugs every year, new therapies every year. So that's a very poor ratio, which means a lot of money, and these processes take a lot of money. They take hundreds of millions, if not close to $1 billion to develop. So essentially what we are attempting to do, our goal is, how do we make that more efficient? How do we make both the choice of therapies better, more targeted, so that they will get to approval, as well as help organizations figure out how they can speed up, make better decisions in terms of what therapies to go after.
Wonderful. I think that's such an important mission. And I think, like you said, it's really solving a business case as well. It's not just doing a social goal, it's also, a really practical business need for this. So that's wonderful to hear. Given the work that you do in life sciences and the way that binomial works, one thing that kind of struck me is that, it kind of also plays a key role in democratizing information or knowledge. So, do you believe that AI has a larger role in doing that, not only in the life sciences space, but for organizations across other categories and industries as well, and also for individuals?
No, great. That's a great question, Karam. And I don't think it's just me. I think a very large number of people who are working in the space believe that AI, in some way, can potentially bring in the next. It's almost like electricity from the 1930s, right? It has the power to make a very significant change in how we live, how we are able to access resources, figure out what we need to do, be more effective as people, not just as organizations, but as communities, as individuals. What it does is it gives access to knowledge in a way that was impossible even 4 years ago. I mean, if you think about it, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to do some things, whether it's how to do bureaucratic processes, how to deal with governance, how to fix things, but also how to build things. And both from at an individual level, from a livelihood perspective, but also from a day-to-day bandwidth perspective, there's a lot of time we spend on things of that nature. There's a cost associated with that. AI has the ability for us, if done right, for us to truly empower individuals and small groups to be able to leverage that very strongly. As an example, very simply, um, folks preparing for UPSC exams in India, or folks preparing for any kind of exams in India, the cost of preparing for those exams goes down very significantly if done right. The cost of building out, uh, pick anything, drone technology, uh, small micro reactors for development of chemicals, interesting code or setting up code for interesting applications. I mean, all of these become very accessible for people who understand the business need but may not have the technical expertise to be able to identify what they need to do and build that out. And that's very significant. That's huge.
Very true, sir. It is very significant, but all this also comes with some significant challenges, which I'd be remiss if I didn't address while I have you on here. When we talk about complex challenges, a lot of the media narrative, at least, for that, normal people who aren't that entrenched in artificial intelligence and people who maybe aren't that technically knowledgeable, come across is that, as we solve more and more complex challenges, we need more and more data to train our models. We need to keep scaling them up. And that doesn't come without challenges. It comes with lots of investment as well. It comes with perhaps environmental costs and a number of challenges. So, how do you see the need to scale? Is it a bottleneck, and how do you solve for that really in this day and age?
So I think even before we get to scaling, I think a major issue um, with AI, with democratizing AI, is in my mind is around hallucinations. I said, I talked a little bit about how it can empower people to do a lot of things, to learn, to be able to build out small organizations, to be able to solve problems where they understand a business need, where they understand what needs to be done, but they don't have the technical skills or want to learn the technical skills. Hallucination plays a big role because I'm not the expert in the domain, right? I am um, I'm depending on UAI, whatever model I'm using, to be able to acquire that because I'm going after a certain business case. And solving that hallucination problem is an extremely important part of being able to democratize AI. Without that, I don't see that happening. As an example, I was talking to a young friend in Delhi last week, and they were talking about using AI for preparation of various exams, including UPSC and clerical exams and things of that nature. And he was talking about uh, you know the AI hallucinating, giving them wrong answers, giving them wrong questions. And for someone who's preparing and who doesn't have that background, that becomes a major issue, right? So that's a place where unless we solve the and I'm giving you a very simple example. The same thing holds true for development of products and so on. If I'm hiring someone as an individual, bringing in expertise to build out drones for me, I would depend on them to know their domain. So if I'm going to be bringing in AI as a small organization, as a small company I don't have deep pockets. I need my solution to work maybe by the second time I try it, not the 10th time. Um, I need to be able to depend on the intelligence that I'm getting, on the knowledge that I'm getting. And that's a big one. I don't see democratization happening unless we solve the hallucination problem. In fact, I believe that it will result in really two layers of solution. One is a very generic solution that Janta can use, that people can use, and then a solution that skilled people can use, people who have that knowledge anyways, and they are using it just to kind of get some ideas of what they should go after. And that's not democratizing AI.
Yes, that absolutely limits, the accessibility for a lot of people because, if they can't trust what's coming out, they can't really use it
That's
that well. And,
that's right.
for those of us who aren't, that well versed, could you explain, how these hallucinations can have come to be? Like, how do they just create information out of thin air?
So, I'll simplify this significantly, and if you're an expert, uh, treat this as a slightly oversimplified version. I mean, essentially, what the encoder decoder models do is they attempt to suggest what the next token, next word, next phrase will be, and they will use that. I mean, think about this. even 6, 8, 5 years ago, we had on our phones autocomplete, right? And in some ways, this is autocomplete on steroids, autocomplete with a lot more data, autocomplete with a lot more compute power. But it's still looking at a probabilistic model of what might we say next. Now, the problem there is if I ask you for, hey, can you design a trip for me for, an itinerary for how the tourist spots in Delhi, what should I go do? Which museum should I visit? I mean, if you miss something or you say something incorrectly, it's not going to end my day. But if I say, hey, how do I build um, a smart drone that has some self-controlling capabilities? You giving me incorrect answers will make a huge difference in my ability to move forward, right? Or if I say, hey, help me figure out which hospital should I go to? I live in the Kalkaji area. Which hospital should I go to because I'm having this kind of issue? If you give me the wrong information, that might impact me, right? So those are cases where that accuracy matters, and just being able to give a probabilistic based um, next token, next phrase, which is what these guys do, which the current models do. That's where hallucination comes from, and that makes an impact. Um, the other piece there, I mean, so we talked about hallucination, and your original question was around scaling. So let me go back to that, Karam, for a minute. The compute needed for these is also pretty high, right? So um, now you think about scaling, think about the government of India, think about communities in small towns. The government of India or communities needing help from the government of India will be asking hundreds of thousands of questions, even within a district every day. The amount of compute needed to answer even these basic questions scales, becomes very expensive. So I don't know if you could argue today that Anthropic is providing solutions at $20 a month or with a certain number of questions. But very quickly, as you begin to scale at this level, the compute needs are become very high. So I don't know if a community group or a government of India, if it looks at scaling, um, has the ability. And it's not a question. It's not a question of the will, but the costs become very high, and we will need to figure out where does that budget come from. Communities certainly don't have that kind of budget, right? The second piece is that we are already seeing that the amount of energy needed for GPUs, amount of cooling needed for these GPUs is high. I mean, it's not just, I mean, across the world, grids are beginning to make decisions about um, energy for data centers versus energy for communities, right? Um, uh, while India has done extremely well in the last decade, or maybe a couple of decades in terms of its growth, energy is still something we deal with as a constraint, right? I mean, it's not too long ago that living in Delhi, we had power shortages 6 hours a day, etc. Right? Um, I think those are concerns that we need to figure out. And to me, as AI begins to pick up and it really needs to scale, the energy needs, the cooling needs become high. We need to figure out what are models that will be better, which can scale more, and things of that nature. And there are people who've been talking about other models as well. I mean, at Pienomial, we are exploring other models as well. But I mean, someone like Jan LeCun at Meta has talked about other models. There are people who have been looking at, how humans, but also other animals, insects, make decisions, and their decision systems seem to be much more comprehensive or within whatever they are doing, but much more efficient. So how do we learn from that and uh, develop better models? These are all questions that we at Pienomial are asking as well. But certainly, I think these are questions that need to be answered for us to be able to really bring AI to larger communities, to democratize it, to be able to make it as scalable and powerful a tool as possible.
Absolutely, sir. And I think we all appreciate that, your organization and other organizations like yours are working towards this because, like you said, if you want to democratize it, we need to figure out how to make it more accessible from a costing and from an electricity consumption point of view. Speaking about limitations, these are kind of limitations on the hardware side. But another limitation that a lot of people are concerned about, especially in markets like India, for example, is data. A lot of people are worried about it from a privacy standpoint, but a lot of people are worried about it from, say, a bias standpoint as well. Because, if you talk about India, for example, a lot of the models we use, for example, today would be a Chat GPT or Meta's AI systems, and these are trained on Western data sets. So for an Indian person, sometimes they aren't able to give contextual answers or answers that make sense, for India. So, do you think that data privacy, how do you solve for the data privacy challenge? And also, how do you solve for, local context in data?
No, that's an extremely good question, and my answer will be slightly detailed, but it'll be two-pronged. Okay, so just bear with me. The first around data privacy, again, that's an issue that we at Pienomial have been working on, and this is especially true in the life science space, right? Because uh, both from a regulation perspective, so in the US and Europe and in India as well, there are regulations like HIPAA, but similar regulations that really work and think about protecting patient data sets, right? And one of the things that we've been looking at is, what are leakages, kinds of leakages that can happen from using RAG-like models, things like that. But also, can we build algorithms that work on encrypted data? And we've gotten some prototypes there. We hope that we will be able to, and we believe we'll be able to release or launch something in the next couple of months that actually show that we can work on encrypted data and get that out to people as well. So, which means that the models actually work on encrypted data, right? That's something that we've been looking at. The other part of that in the Indian context, I think, is and there's been a small round of discussions with the AI forum, AI India group as well. Is we've been talking about data dan, but one of the things that I've been suggesting is maybe we should also talk about experience dan. And what I mean by that is the following: um, there's a very rich demographic of experiences that our communities have had. I look at my dad. I look at his friends, that generation. I look at people even 10 years older to me. I look at my generation. Um, there's a there's a history. There's a rich history of our lives, our how we how we got started out in our careers, what kinds of problems were solved in the engineering space, in the business space, in the sales and marketing space, in supply chain space, through experience, right? Data doesn't always capture that. How do we? So one of the conversations we were having was, is there a way we can look at an experience done problem? Get folks who are senior or who have retired to talk about their experiences professionally, but also their experiences at a cultural level, their experiences in terms of raising a family, their experiences in terms of dealing with loneliness, their experiences in terms of dealing with how they brought up their kids, things of that nature, right? That's a much more that's hugely unstructured data, but it's also a lot very contextual data, right? And you talked about local. I mean, you can't get more local than experiences, and experiences by kinds of companies, experiences by where you grew up, things of that nature. I think if that becomes a huge source, but that if I turn that around, that's also that I think that should give us a lot of contextual data for specific situations that are not just India based, that are very, very focused, that could be based off, that could be related to Devas in Madhya Pradesh, right? I mean, so how do we leverage that? I think that's something that we've been playing around. So again, watch out for this space. I think uh, between a few of us, Pienomial, but as well as the AI for India forum, we are looking at something on these lines coming up. So look out for the space. I think this will be some exciting work happening here.
Wonderful. So I think that's a beautiful thought. donate experiences. I think that's something that I think everyone can get behind and can really color our experience of AI as well. I think that was a sobering thought to leave it at, but I'm not going to leave you right there. I just want to get you to share any parting thoughts that you have about artificial intelligence or the work that's happening in India around artificial intelligence. Do you have any message for those in the AI community in India? What they can work towards, what they should look at. Any last party messages for us?
The one other thing I think we should be looking at, and we at Pienomial, we are um, just as limited, is this is a huge opportunity with a new technology. I think there's also a huge opportunity for collaboration, and it's not clear to me that um, that we are collaborating in a way that we could be, and not collaborate. I mean, every organization is looking out for its objective function in today's day and age. It's about, hey, how do I raise money? How do I generate revenue? Blah blah blah. All that's absolutely true. There's also a lot of IP that companies need to be keeping internally. All of that is true. You could also argue that, hey, what are you talking about collaboration? Open models are available. I mean, Meta releasing Llama is probably the biggest one. Yes, but that's not what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is that if we connect some of these dots, we talked about democratization. Democratization depends on people learning from each other. We talked about community use. We talked about experience done. These are all quote unquote collaborative models. But how do I take that? Is there an ecosystem we can create in terms of um, beginning to share some of these tools, but also beginning to share how these tools can be used from local solutions perspective, right? I mean, if we really are looking at democratization, we are looking at empowering a grassroots level learning and use of these tools. We really need to think about what kind of ecosystem plays in there. So as an example, could we, for example, have um, students coming out of engineering colleges, and I'm saying engineering, but it could be really any college, because it's taken away. AI provides the I mean, you need your subject matter expertise. So you could be a biologist, you could be an accountant, doesn't matter, right? How can you take these tools and solve local problems? What kind of ecosystem needs to be to happen, and how do we collaboratively set that ecosystem up so that um, so that kids coming out of a young people coming out of colleges or in their end years of colleges are able to pick up these tools and see how they would solve local problems of the kirane dukan, of the local grocery store, local problems of the local clinic, local problems of local contractors, small companies, right? There's a I mean, that really would be very interesting. And you talk about an enablement. That's really where the power of AI would begin to shine economically, as well as from a support system for the communities that we really live in.
Couldn't agree more. So I think, especially on the collaboration front, I hope AI for India can play a small role in that, and other forums such as AI for India can help support that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time. I think this has been a very enriching conversation for us, and I hope the community takes away a lot from this. I know you're busy, so have a lovely day, and we look
Thank you,
forward to
Karan.
speaking with you again soon.